My childhood friend came to my door with a suitcase. I didn't know where else to go but you. The loud knock at my front door came just as thunder cracked across the evening sky. Rain hammered against the windows with such force that I almost ignored it, assuming it was only a loose branch striking the porch. But then came another knock, slower this time, weaker, almost desperate. When I opened the door, time itself seemed to stop. Standing there, soaked from head to toe, was the one person I never expected to see again. My childhood best friend held an old blue suitcase in one trembling hand, her eyes red from crying, her smile completely gone. She looked at me as though she had carried the weight of the world alone for far too long. With tears mixing into the rain on her face, she whispered the words that would change both of our lives forever. I didn't know where else to go but you. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can save lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. For several seconds I couldn't move. Memories flooded my mind so quickly that it almost hurt. We had once been inseparable. We grew up on the same quiet street where every summer afternoon felt endless. We built treehouses from broken wooden boards, raced bicycles until sunset, skipped stones across the old lake, and promised that no matter where life took us, we would always remain family. Those promises felt unbreakable when we were children. But life has a way of testing promises made by innocent hearts. As high school ended, our paths quietly drifted apart. I stayed behind to care for my aging father after my mother passed away, while she left town to chase dreams much bigger than our little neighborhood. At first, we exchanged letters, then text messages, then occasional birthday wishes. Eventually even those disappeared. Years passed without a single conversation. I often wondered how she was doing, but pride convinced me she had built a wonderful life and no longer needed someone from her past reminding her where she came from. Now she stood in front of me looking nothing like the confident young woman who had once dreamed of conquering the world. Her expensive-looking suitcase had scratches across every corner, as if it had been dragged through countless train stations and airports. Her coat was soaked through. Her hands were shaking from cold, exhaustion, or perhaps fear. There was something heartbreaking about the way she kept glancing behind her, as though she expected someone to appear at any moment. Without asking questions, I stepped aside and let her in. The warmth inside my small house wrapped around her immediately, but it didn't seem to reach the sadness in her eyes. I handed her a towel and made a cup of tea exactly the way she used to like it when we were teenagers. Honey instead of sugar. A slice of lemon. I hadn't realized I still remembered. She looked around the modest living room and quietly smiled. Almost everything had changed over the years except the old bookshelf in the corner and the faded family photograph hanging above the fireplace. She stared at that photograph longer than anything else, and I noticed fresh tears filling her eyes. Neither of us rushed into explanations. Sometimes pain needs silence before it finds words. Hours passed before she finally began telling me what had happened. The city she had once believed would fulfill every dream had slowly become a prison. She had built a successful career, worked impossible hours, and surrounded herself with people who applauded her achievements but disappeared the moment her life began falling apart. A relationship she believed would last forever slowly turned controlling, then emotionally abusive. She convinced herself she could fix everything if she simply tried harder. She ignored warning signs because admitting failure seemed more frightening than living with constant disappointment. Then came the day she lost both her job and the apartment tied to it. Friends who had celebrated every promotion suddenly stopped answering calls. Family relationships had already faded years earlier after old disagreements. Every bridge she thought would support her collapsed beneath her feet. She spent several nights sleeping in cheap motels before realizing she had almost no money left. While searching through an old wallet, she discovered a faded photograph from our childhood. We were standing beside our unfinished treehouse covered in dirt, laughing so hard neither of us could look at the camera. That picture reminded her of the one place she had always felt safe. My home. Listening to her story filled me with emotions I couldn't easily describe. Part of me felt angry that life had been so cruel to someone who once carried endless optimism. Another part silently wondered why she had waited until everything was broken before asking for help. But stronger than either feeling was something simpler. She had trusted me enough to knock on my door. The following days were awkward at first. Two people who had once known everything about each other now struggled to navigate years of silence. We spoke carefully, almost like strangers trying not to offend one another. Yet small moments slowly rebuilt what time had stolen. We cooked together. We laughed over embarrassing childhood memories. We found the old board game we used to play every rainy weekend. Little by little, the walls around both of our hearts began to crumble. Still, healing wasn't easy. Nightmares often woke her before dawn. Some mornings she sat on the porch staring into the distance without speaking. She carried invisible scars that no one else could see. There were days she blamed herself for every bad decision she'd ever made. She believed asking for help meant she had failed. I understood those feelings more than she realized. While caring for my father through his illness, I had quietly isolated myself from nearly everyone. After he passed away, loneliness became so familiar that I stopped noticing it. I buried myself in work and routine because facing grief seemed impossible. My house had become comfortable but empty. Her unexpected arrival forced me to confront my own pain. Somehow, two broken people started helping each other heal. Weeks turned into months. She found a small job at the local bookstore. The paycheck wasn't impressive, but each evening she returned home smiling a little more than the day before. She began planting flowers in the neglected garden outside my house. Bright colors slowly replaced the weeds that had grown there for years. Neighbors noticed the transformation before I did. One elderly woman smiled one afternoon and said the house looked alive again. She was right. One evening we visited the old lake where we had spent countless childhood summers. The giant oak tree still stood proudly beside the shore, though our treehouse had long since disappeared. Nature had reclaimed it completely. Standing there reminded us that even things that disappear can leave lasting foundations. We talked about dreams we had abandoned, mistakes we regretted, and the strange ways life had shaped us. For the first time in years, neither of us pretended to have everything figured out. That honesty became our greatest strength. Then, just as life finally seemed peaceful, the past returned. A man arrived unexpectedly one afternoon asking to speak with her. The fear that instantly appeared on her face told me everything before a single word was spoken. She froze exactly as she had on the rainy night she first arrived. Instead of hiding, she walked outside. I stayed close enough to help if needed but far enough to respect her decision. The conversation lasted only minutes. When she came back inside, she was crying, not because she was frightened anymore, but because she had finally found the courage to say no. She had spent years allowing guilt and manipulation to control her choices. This time she chose herself. That simple decision marked the beginning of true freedom. From that day forward, she no longer looked over her shoulder. She looked ahead. Life continued moving quietly. The bookstore owner eventually promoted her to manage community events because customers loved her warmth and genuine kindness. She organized reading programs for children, weekend gatherings for senior citizens, and charity drives for struggling families. Watching her encourage others reminded me of the fearless girl who once believed every problem had a solution. Only now, her kindness came from experience instead of innocence. As for me, I realized I had hidden from life for far too long. Inspired by her determination, I finally pursued the woodworking business I had dreamed about for years. The small workshop behind my house slowly filled with handcrafted furniture and shelves built with patience instead of hurry. For the first time in years, our futures felt bigger than our pasts. People often believe miracles happen all at once. They don't. Sometimes miracles arrive quietly carrying an old suitcase. Sometimes they knock on your door in the middle of a storm. Sometimes they ask for nothing more than a safe place to begin again. Looking back, I often wonder what might have happened if I had ignored that first knock, assuming it was only the wind. One decision changed 2 lives. Not because either of us had all the answers, but because kindness created space where healing became possible. Months later, on another rainy evening, we stood together on the same porch where everything had begun. This time the rain no longer felt lonely. The flowers she had planted danced gently in the breeze, their colors brighter than ever. The house that had once echoed with silence now carried laughter, shared meals, and the comforting sound of friendship restored. She thanked me for opening the door. But the truth was far simpler. She had rescued me just as much as I had rescued her. Sometimes the people who come seeking shelter unknowingly become the light that fills the darkness already living inside us. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in hope, leave a heartfelt comment below, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us of the incredible power of compassion and forgiveness. Sparkling Heart special request: before this story ends, please comment with the words, "Kindness always finds a way." Your message may encourage someone reading the comments who feels alone today. As the years passed, visitors who came to our home never knew the incredible story hidden behind that ordinary front door. They saw 2 lifelong friends laughing over coffee, tending a beautiful garden, and living peaceful lives. They never saw the storm that brought us back together, the tears shed in silence, or the courage it took to ask for help. But perhaps that is how the most meaningful stories are meant to be. They are not remembered because everything went perfectly. They are remembered because someone chose compassion instead of judgment, hope instead of fear, and love instead of turning away. And every time thunder rolls across the sky and rain begins to fall against my windows, I still remember that desperate knock. It reminds me that no matter how lost someone may become, there is always a chance for a new beginning if even one door, and one heart, remains open.